And I'd like to welcome Dr. Jim Boehner this evening, N2ZZ. Yes, Jim is a medical doctor of many years. He was first licensed as a ham in 1969 and is an avid DXer. So Bill's earlier presentation is quite appropriate. Jim has achieved the DXCC honor roll with 348 all-time countries confirmed. So quite an achievement. Welcome, Jim, and take it away. Over to you.
First of all, I want to congratulate your club on being the Hamvention Club of the Year in 2021. And I also found out that last year you were the ARRLDA section convention for the first time. Congratulations. I can see why it is. And just as far as the stats, because I'm also looking at stats, you guys are the second largest club in the Roanoke division, next to the Raleigh Amateur Radio Society. Bill, you gave an excellent talk. I really enjoyed this. I wanted to add one more thing to your reason for DXing. Since I've been doing a lot of research on a number of things, I was looking at Part 97, our basis and purpose of being amateur radio operators. And last but not least is to promote international goodwill. And that's probably one of the number one things that I've seen of what makes DX the way it is, or as they say, DX is. So I had a great time. I could not pronounce the DX that was on, and I had a little problem because on the packet cluster they were showing sugar 90K, and then I went around. And I said that can't be right, and then finally it got down to sugar 9 Oscar Kilo. So I worked them a couple of times, and I invite everyone to do it. And if you have a chance to get into Club Log, you really need to see how the grid works on this, on the DXpeditions, because as soon as you work, you get a check mark in whatever band mode you're on, and it's a lot of fun. And Bill, I also want to thank that you talked about FT8, and the question came up, is it real amateur radio? And all I can say is I like to try new things. The FT8 thing really got me. You know, the question is it real amateur radio? And I love the talk saying, well, yeah, I know. Well, AM is real amateur radio, isn't it? Or your single slot bucket, remember that? So I'm not that old, but I do remember all that. And what is amateur radio? Wherever there's a means of communication or something that you can actually have fun with, that's amateur radio to me. So yes, I've really got bit by the FT8 bug, and as of this time, I'm probably over 7,000 contacts on it. Something just fun to do. We're going to talk about my passion with doing some stuff with vintage radios. My idea of vintage radios is in the late 60s, early 70s, because that's how and when I got into amateur radio. And those were the things that I saw and I really wanted and I could never have. And I just have interest. The other interest you have is as you get older, you're saying you want to make things that are old work again. So as you can see from my QRZ.com page, I've got very much into vintage radio. So I thought I'd bring up one thing that I did document fairly well. And if you'll bear with me, and this is the venerable SB-220. The SB-220 was the amplifier that was in the late 60s, early 70s. That was the 2 kilowatt Heathkit linear. It was relatively simple. There are a lot of them around. They are kind of bulletproof. So I said, you know, I'd like to try this. So first thing I did is went to eBay. Where else do you find stuff? Obviously, there weren't a whole lot of hamfests around at the time because of COVID and everything. But here we are. This is the 2 kilowatt amplifier, and this is how it sat as it was on the eBay site. And as we can see, again, another venerable, the 3500 Zulus, the tubes. The big selling point of this is that the radio was old, but the tubes were supposedly new. So I said, okay, I can probably handle all the other stuff, so let's do the tubes. Now, here's something that I didn't like. See these wires coming to the back with the fuses? This is 3 kilovolts. And I thought this was a bad idea. And if I can get back to show you the back of this, you can see a little bit of carbon there. So obviously there were some misadventures. So I thought that was a good thing to get away from. So basically, I cleaned this up. And people ask what I did to clean things up with. Basically, a toothbrush and Windex. That's kind of my big thing. So this is the old transformer, the old diode boards, and there's some capacitors here as well. The tubes are out, as I was wanted to protect those and not get a chance of breaking them or causing any problems. Just to kind of show you what it looks like, this is the old diode board. As you can see, there's carbon here, so there's obviously some misadventures that happened as well with this amplifier. Here you can see I have a lot of stuff labeled because I'm about to put in one of the new Harbach boards. These are the input coils. This is the one for each of the bands so that the exciter or your HF rig would be able to be tuned to be able to go into the amplifier. How do you tweak these when the amplifier is on? You don't. They say that they're fixed at the factory, but remember, that was 50 years ago. So I was a little worried. So here's a kind of a long shot of everything, the transformer, the diode board. And so let's have a magic transformation. I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and build the new board. I'm going to start here, and this is one side of the new board. These are the replacement capacitors on the other side. Now, the way this works is these capacitors are hidden within a block that I'll show you in another second. But take a look at these new ones. They're about 2 inches high. This was the diode board, the new diode board. But these were the old capacitors. Talk about innovation. The other ones were about 2 inches. These are about 6 or 7 inches. Kind of big, and but it was kind of interesting to see the technology and how it got better. So I ended up installing these. And take a look at this. This was over here is where the tuning parts are. Cleaned up the transformer a little bit, and over here was the diode board, the capacitor board. See this right here? The capacitors are actually within this Bakelite. I think it's Bakelite or of some sort of insulating material that held them. Here are the clips from those fuses because I was going to get rid of those fuses. That just was not a safe type of thing to have. So there's a top shot and a side shot. Still, it has that old wiring that's coming up to the board. And there's the back for the meter face. Kind of interesting. These are where the pilot lights are that actually lit up the meters. Another picture. So I started out with that, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's kind of neat. The 3500 Zulus, anybody that's done any amplifier work knows about these things. These were like the staple of an amateur radio. They're in a lot of the Ameritron amps. This is the Amperex. The IMAX look a lot cooler, but these work and they're new. So good for that. So those of you that do anything with any sort of radios know what a smoke test is, because all radios basically get their life from smoke. Once you let the smoke out, their life goes away. So this was going to be a 220 volt connection. So everything was ready. As you can see, everything's cleaned. I've got the tubes in there, the fans there, everything's wired. Well, fortunately, I didn't blow anything up, which was my history when I was playing with Swan equipment. So starting with the smoke test, it's kind of hard to see the meters here, but of course the thing that you look for is the high voltage, and you can see about 2.25 kilovolts, not bad. No smoke, everything seemed to be working fine. So I was very happy about that, no misadventures. So coming back, I said, okay, now this is working. Now I got to find ways of screwing it up. No, not really. There's a soft key mod because whenever you hook up an amplifier, there's going to be a keying circuit, and that keying circuit in the older amplifiers had about 70 to 100 volts on it. And if you put that onto a newer rig, you will fry it. So again, Harbach came to the rescue and ended up putting in the soft key mod, which basically put everything to the potentials that the newer transceivers could handle. There's kind of a longer thing up there and the connections. That's what my line voltage is. That's not exciting. Okay, so there's also a soft start mod, and this is supposed to be able to protect the tubes, the switches, and a number of the components that are mostly irreplaceable at this point. If you want to replace them, you're going to have to buy another unit and take some trash out of there. So there's one. That's the soft key mod. And unfortunately, I didn't get a top thing, but basically it's 2 resistors and 2 relays. So coming here, I will kind of show you the long thing, and this of course is where the connections are to decide whether or not it's 120 volts or 220 volts. And everything is good. It didn't have any supports, but I was able to support it by the wires and some MOVs for the power circuit. I'm not sure if you're going to get sound out of this, but this is how the soft key circuit is. Look at the meter. Turn it on. Starts to about 2 kilovolts and then comes back up. So it's just that's their soft start mod. I, of course had to replace the fan because it was making some noise. So those of you that have been in this for a long time probably have heard of Peter Dahl transformers. Well, Peter Dahl sold out to Hammond, and these were available in DigiKey. So this is what the new transformer looks like, or the higher current transformer, the Peter Dahl transformer. So as I was doing things, I said, okay, well, I really need to trace this out. Now, see all these wires here? Notice here that there's a cross out on 3 and there's a 4. Well, guess what? They labeled the transformer wrong. And I'm glad I checked continuity before I hooked it up to the linear. I sent a note to them, and they said, "We're sorry. We'll check the other one we have in stock." And of course, the other one in stock didn't have any problems. So at least I caught that before a disaster happened. So as far as the installation, I'm going to run through this a little quickly. These are the wires that came from the transformer, and I'd end up replacing these heavy ones that had come up from the previous transformer, those kind of cloth type covers. Hopefully there's not any asbestos in there. So this is with it mounted, and from 2.25 kilovolts, we're now up to 3.2 kilovolts. So transformer did well. So I was happy about that. And again, here's another picture. And of course, it did take a little bit more space, so I had to get my nibbling tool out to nibble the top of this, and able to get that through. So remember, I had the two fuse holders in the back that were pretty ugly, and had to figure out what to do with those. So I said, okay, well, let's put in a filament hour meter. Something that whenever the filaments turn on, this turns on, so you can actually count how many hours that the filaments spend. Kind of a ridiculous thing because you don't really need it, but I had to cover up that hole, so I had to do something. So that worked out. That worked out well. Now you remember they did have that fuse. First of all, Heathkit didn't put in a fuse, but it was a smart thing. If I go back to these others, if you take the top off of this, there's a shorting bar that basically shorts the high voltage to ground so you don't kill yourself. The trouble is it also blows up the diode board and probably the capacitor board as well. So I did find someone that had these standoffs to be able to do this, and I was able to put a fuse right in the compartment that would be covered by the screen. And here's kind of the new wiring. Okay, we're coming. Hairpin parasitics. You saw the other ones that were kind of resistors that had coils around them that were pretty much disintegrated. This is nichrome wire, which, by the way, doesn't solder well, but it crimps well, and got the parasitics on there. They're supposed to be better, but who knows what better is. But I haven't had any problems since I had those put in. So A quick thing about that filament hour meter. Had to put some standoffs on it, some capacitors to ground, and here's the finished product. It doesn't have the display on there, but that's what the whole thing looks like afterwards. So, coming up, the finished product was this. The back, I've never known how to clean all this stuff. If someone has any ideas, I'd love to hear them, but I did everything I could from the Windex and brush. Here's the finished linear, which looks pretty much like the beginning linear because I've got the case on it. The 220 operation. Here's the front with its power on. And although this can't be pictured, if I was a master photographer, I'd be able to blend out the screening in there and look at the filaments, but they're absolutely beautiful. And there's it from the top. And this picture didn't come out well, but that's kind of a picture at the top. So how'd we do? 1,247. Remember, 2 kilowatts was an input rating on these amplifiers way back when. So this is average power, but when you come down to it, the 23500 Zulus usually will get you about 1,300. To try to get to full legal limit is kind of difficult for the 3500 Zulus. Okay, and last slide. After all this work, you've got to have a little bit of bling here. And there's someone who had made this. And so that's it. That's the SB-220 from start to finish. And I've got one other thing to show. Of course, after I got started with the 220 and had such a great time, and I didn't even tell you about my history. My history is that I had an SB-303, which I remember assembling about the time that Nixon resigned, and I had an SB-400. So I kind of was a Heathkit fan way back. But as I did this, I said, I had a great time. Here's the complete SB station from the SB-220, the SB-610, oh, I'm sorry, this is the SB-102. This is the SB-600 speaker with the HP23 power supply. This is the waveform thing for checking transmit audio and the rest. This here is the Scanalyzer. This is, believe me, when we talked about DX and how much I need spectrum scopes, and I'm sure Bill knows this, the spectrum scope on your 7610 has got to be the thing that makes DXing worthwhile. This thing is very rustic. But then something I always wanted to get was the SB-630, which was the station console, which had the SWR meter, the phone patch. What's that? Well, anyway. But the big thing was this mechanical clock. It's now been about 9 months. It has not lost a minute of time. And since I'm used to GPS clocks and all that other stuff, I am amazed. But I keep looking to see if there's going to be something, and nothing. And I got 2 very difficult to find pieces. This is the remote VFO, which is the SB-640, and even more remote. And those of you that remember Nixie tubes, the SB-650. This was wonderful. I did find the same microphone from the time that I was there. The Heathkit Keyer, you may remember, that used to be very, very popular. And of course, also the power meter, which of course made this SWR meter pretty much useless. But the station all functions. I like to fire it up from time to time. I also have other vintage equipment, but this has been an incredible run to just be able to clean things up. I had to do modifications to the 102 for both this and this and this. So it was fun to get my fingers back into electronics again. Nowadays, the electronics are at a point, if they break, you're going to just have to send them off because there's nothing you can do. I'm not good at tracing out things, but I'm pretty good at taking things that work and try to make them better. This has been recapped, that is new electrolytic capacitors, and all these was new electrolytic capacitors from Hayseed Hamfest. So all good. Well, I hope I didn't bore anybody. This is kind of a passion, and I saw a couple of people in the audience that probably appreciate all of this, and the fact that the SB line was basically the second to Collins. One thing I wanted to show you that you should really get. I just picked this up, and if it shows up, this just came out. This is a Heathkit, or Guide to the Amateur Radio Products by Whiskey Alpha 7 Zulu Zulu Echo. I bought it on eBay. It's probably on Amazon now. Anything you ever wanted to know about Heathkit radios is in here, including their initial prices and information and pictorial. What I did is I took everything that I had and put it into one file just so I could reference it. This was a QST article of all of the Heathkit series from the beginning. I think it's missing a few things, but that's pretty impressive. But for example, the SB-102, it basically has the references, it tells you how it marketed and the rest. This has been the neatest book for someone that has had interest in Heathkit. So I'd recommend doing it. It's not that expensive, but there's the 220, the 102, and the 600, and I'm sure he's got the power supply in there. So Heathkit Guide to the Amateur Radio Products by Chuck Penson. All right. Any questions on that? Happy
so Jim, that's an Electrovoice microphone, right?
It's a rebranded Electrovoice microphone. Heathkit ended up buying it from Electrovoice.
Okay, because I use that same mic with my KWM2.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's a great mic. I'll tell you, I have this up here, but what I really use, and talk about being old, are D104s. D104s just had a classic sound to them. They're a little bit shrill, but they really did cut through. And on one of my other ones, I spoke to someone, and I got an amplified one. And then I found out, well, that was what CBers were really interested in the time. So what use is it for me? So I put it down in my storage area. And then I spoke with somebody who was working with me on Collins. He said, hey, can you modify your radio a little bit, add a few resistors? And I said, absolutely. So went through, got the schematic, added the resistors, and kind of made it the same way. He said that this was the way the Collins stuff, the proper impedance and everything, and it's worked fine since. But the neatest thing is when I bought the Amplified D104, I still had a Black Cat Rayovac battery from 1976 that was there. And it still had some power left. Not a lot, but it had some. So it's kind of a good trip down memory lane.
A question here. This is Kevin, WB0POH. You did an SB-200. You just showed us about your linear amplifier. I noticed you had an SB-102. Did you have to restore that radio, or have you been keeping that one up?
That one is something that I actually bought with someone that was selling it restored. There were still some things I had to do to it. There were a few electrolytics that had to be changed, but it was in very good shape, and the person who did it was kind of a guru in Heathkit, so he really knew how to tune it up well. So when I got it, it was already neutralized. Everything was working well with it. Like I said, just a few equipment changes, and what I did have to do is when you put in the remote VFO, you have to change the whatever they call it, the board that has the crystal socket on it, and basically switch it so you're able to use that. And it's kind of neat as you switch the switch over on the side. And I won't bother showing again, but basically you can tell that the 640, the remote VFO, is working because the red light's on. So kind of neat.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Hey, Jim, how long did it take you to do that restoration?
You know, the interesting thing about this is Bill, the vice director, had got an SB-200 that he was going to renovate. And at that time, I kind of said, you know, I really always wanted to do this. Well, I had mine done before he had his case off. So it probably took about a month to get everything ready.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? I think we kind of reached the end of our time here. And Jim, I want to thank you for sharing your evening with us, and thank you for all the things you shared. And you're welcome to stick around. I don't if anybody else is going to stick around. I don't know where Andrew wandered off to, but this will end the formal meeting. And anybody who wants to hang around and chit chat about various radio topics is welcome to.